A drive through the neighborhoods of Maxwell Heights, McFerrin Park, and Cleveland Park may not seem like a chance to observe a historic landscape, but it is. For over 150 years, this area has been home to one of Nashville's oldest African American communities. The history begins during the Civil War when fugitive slaves from surrounding counties found refuge at a freedmen's camp located in historic Edgefield. The camp formed the nucleus of a small but flourishing black settlement that continues today. In fact, many neighborhood churches have roots in the Reconstruction era. In Northeast Nashville, the process of gentrification has sparked a conversation about community history. This project aims to recognize, celebrate, and preserve the area's African American history before it's too late.
So I want to start with a story about Robbie Sanford, who's actually a young white woman. Came to Nashville in the 1920s. She had been living on a small farm deep in Rutherford County, Tennessee, not too far from here. And back in 1981, she told an interviewer that she, quote, "I just plain had a fight with my father, and that there were no opportunities for making money out here. So she just came to Nashville." And when the interviewer said, "Why did you go to Nashville?" she said, "Where else was I to go?" And so for a lot of these rural women coming to Nashville, this was a place that was an opportunity to escape a very constrained, low opportunity rural area. So Robbie Sanford's experience of leaving home in the countryside and coming to a city like Nashville is a part of what we normally consider to be the Great Migration. And when we think of the Great Migration, we tend to think of people leaving farms, African Americans, whites as well, leaving cotton farms, tobacco farms, what have you, taking the train and going up to a place like Chicago or Detroit, or heading out west to Los Angeles, making their way in one of these larger American cities. But thousands and thousands of people also stayed closer in the region and came to places like Nashville. And in the years before World War II, before Nashville started getting any real foreign immigration, this was the major source of population growth. So if you think about these communities around here, everybody at this time, and even afterwards, is tied to somebody in the countryside through family, through personal experience, through various kin and friendship networks.
Racially restrictive covenants were written into deeds who could live there. Yeah, you could exclude entire groups of people. And there's a Bransford realty company that built thousands of homes in Nashville. I saw them in their deeds start to incorporate them as early as 1906 into properties. And by 1911, this realty company, which is building homes all over Nashville, made this restrictive covenant a standard practice. You can see that the fourth one says, "No swine shall be kept on the premises." The fifth one says that neither the premises nor any part thereof shall be sold, aligned, conveyed, or devised to any person or persons of African blood or descent, and that no person of African blood or descent shall own or acquire title thereof, either in fee, as tenants, as leases, etc. But it also says that it does not prohibit the person of African blood or descent from living on the premises in the capacity of servants. Domestics, you can be here. Where other people, not so much. They endorse as early as 1936, but they do it up through the 40s, the use of restrictive covenants, right? Influences. NAACP, as you can imagine, writes these guys incredible letters upon letters upon letters. And in response to their attacks saying that the federal government is spreading segregation with federal tax money, the FHA writes them back in 1938 and says, while it may be true that many Negroes in many neighborhoods cannot meet our required standards, it is also unfortunately true that the same condition exists among people of many other races in the neighborhoods in which they live. So in essence, they're saying, we discriminate against y'all, but you're not the only one. Right? Things this one says, a colored resident in your immediate neighborhood destroys the value of your property immeasurably. Perhaps you do not think that your neighborhood will be invaded. Neither do you believe you are going to use a fire, are going to have a fire when you pay fire insurance. And they argue that if this class of people comes into your neighborhood, it will be worse than a fire, right? Which is more menacing than a fire or the elements. Yep. Please.
2016 marks the 100-year anniversary of the Great East Nashville Fire. In a feature story in the Tennessean, journalist Jessica Bliss writes, quote, 100 years ago this week, a raging fire laid waste to affluent East Nashville, leaving 3,000 homeless. The recovery would take decades, but the trendy neighborhood would return, strong as ever, end quote. This statement makes a few assumptions. One is that only affluent residents were impacted by the fire. But there is more to the story. Sociologist Iris Carlson-Linnae's research indicates that the fire destroyed the homes of 324 Black as well as 301 white families of all backgrounds. Social work students at Fisk University provided food and clothing and created a record of household losses.
Sort of thinking about this thread about displacement is the ripping of the social fabric. I know I'm one of the newer residents in my neighborhood. However, when I look at the networks around my neighbors, as people become displaced, there's less connectedness between neighbors. And so there's more suspicion and skepticism about who's living next door, why they moved there, what they're up to. And it creates a sense of unease as opposed to being neighbors. And I think that's one of the things that we don't recognize when we talk about displacement.
What factors do you think contributed to keeping him rooted in this community that may not have been present for others that decided to leave?
Well, for one thing, he had a family to look after. And he wasn't dragging all of us, because there were 9 of us eventually. So he wasn't taking all of us out of town. So he just kept hiding and moving. When the urban renewal came through and took the first shot, then he moved out on White Creek Pike, 2001, White Creek Pike, and rebuilt from there. So that's what kept him here in Nashville.
We had a lot of turmoil during the integration of Nashville. A lot of things went on that in many respects changed the whole dichotomy of the city and changed the whole feel of Nashville for the better. I know my father, he was hired in 1950 by the Banner, and he was a Fisk graduate. He was hired as the first African American to be a reporter in the South. They called him Jackie Robinson of journalism. But he didn't want to work for the Banner because the Banner was basically a racist paper during that time. Their publisher, James Stalin, was truly a supporter of segregation in many ways. And my father had to work from home. He couldn't work in the newsroom with the other reporters. And he had to leave early in the morning and walk to the Banner, which is on, well, the Tennessee and the Banner share the same building, and Tennessee is still there on Broadway. It was not until 1962 that he was allowed to come to the newsroom, and the reason for that, because the Caucasian news reporters went to Stalin and said they're not going to go to any of his functions, they were not going to be participating in any of his extracurricular activities unless my father and mother were allowed to come.
There was I said that there was a black high school, Pearl High School. Right up the street from Pearl was an all-white high school called North High School. Okay? Now, if you're trying to desegregate the system, and the system is 50% black and 50% white, say, and you're trying to get a ratio in each school that approximates that 50 to 50 split, you have to assign children in, okay? As you assign children in, you have to be aware of the grade structure. You have to be aware of the capacity of the building, okay? And one of the sort of things we were looking at was that with a pupil-teacher ratio of 30 children to one teacher, how many classrooms that would require. And so we ended up, and that's the white patch over here, having to take it on the chin and bus a whole lot of black kids way out to farther east, all the way out to the county line.
I went to Mays in grades 1 through 11, and I was looking forward to Hallelujah Chorus, Ms. Dawson and all of us singing the Hallelujah Chorus at Mays graduation, that great family event. And I had to leave Mays my 11th grade year and go to the school that we used to look at over the hill, which was Eastside School, okay? And so that was an experience, having to leave home to go to a new place. It was interesting, to say the least. Now, given the fact when I was in school, we had hand-me-down books. The books that the Caucasian schools finished with, they gave to us. So we were always one book behind. But that did not deter the great teachers that we had at Mays, who nurtured us and taught us and made us believe that we could do anything and everything. You didn't have to put a cape on, you just go do it. And so when we went to East, for the first 10 years, the valedictorian and salutatorian came from Mays. The top 10 class, the top 10 people in the class, senior class were from Mays. And so it showed that we weren't dummies, by no means, but it also showed that our teachers did an outstanding job with the parents. The downside, again, with integration is you lost that connectivity. You lost those teachers who would spend time with you and nurture you and talk with you and encourage you. To find some teachers who had to learn about you.
On the same statement about the letters coming to your house, I get them every day. It's somebody that's saying they want to buy your property. Contact them. They'll give you what it's worth. It don't have to be in your name. Just let us know, and we can participate in getting you a quick sale. That's constantly. Sometimes it used to be on little cards. Now they just so they gotten smart. They put them in envelopes and make it look like a business that they're addressing you with. And also with Sam's problem about the health and people moving out of the neighborhood, we have no way to get to the doctors now. Some of the insurances used to provide transportation for the elderly. They no longer do that, but yet they expect you to keep your appointments and want to know how your health is and stay in good health.
And how it plays into displacement of residents. And so one of the author, forgive me for not remembering the author's name, but as he was examining the issues, and I'm hoping you guys will also maybe touch on this tomorrow, is that for the Airbnb to thrive in some of these up and coming neighborhoods, you have to displace somebody. And so in that displacement, unfortunately it becomes those who are poor, those who may be members of a certain racial or ethnic group. And so the displacement because of Airbnb, sort of feeds the fire for more and more displacement because it's a profitable business. And I know for East Nashville, it's running amok with the Airbnb houses.
Home. Cleveland Park residents, we band together in 2003 to work on crime and the safety of our neighborhood because, as all of you know, we were in a bad shape over here. Nobody wanted to be here, and those of us who wanted to be here thought about being somewhere else. We worked hard and brought our neighborhood back to life. But lately, the gentrification problem has taken the beloved Cleveland Park area that I grew up in. I no longer even recognize some of the things here and the things that are taking place in this area. The developers have come in and ravaged our affordable housing stock. The modest homes that used to be here have been replaced with 2-on-1 lot at prices that the majority of us can only imagine affording. Gentrification doesn't just mean revitalization. We want that. We would like to see, that's what we've been working on for the past 10 or 11 years, trying to revitalize this area, but at the same token, we don't want to displace the people that have stayed here and endured these times when nobody wanted to be here. So we've got to strike a balance. Not only does it affect the residents, it affects our churches in the neighborhood, because a lot of the people who go to the churches, Cleveland Street, New Livingstone, Montgomery, First Street, walk to their church on Sunday morning. And when you start taking out those members who no longer can afford to stay in the neighborhood, you're not only affecting them, but you're affecting the vitality of the churches in the community that do good work in our community and that we need them. We also, within the last 3 months, have lost a longtime resident. I'll just use her first name, Miss Mary. She rented a house for years over in the Cleveland Park area, for around 10 or 15 years. And unfortunately, her home was sold right out from under her. She's now in Sumner County. Couldn't even afford to stay in Davidson County. An example of some of the displacement is right here within walking distance. If you go over to North 9th and Smiley, that was an affordable home that 1 week people were living in. I was on the way to church the following week, it was being torn down. You could actually even see where the nail was hanging a picture in the living room because they tore the house down from front to back, leaving the wall intact where people had family portraits and things hanging. This is the type of thing that we're trying to move away from.
You need to keep in mind two things. That when you talk about these broad trends, that there are people who are being impacted, that it's not just like this generalizable thing. That there are real families whose lives might be changing or undergoing these pressures. So that's something to keep in mind. That's something that's very valuable for me to keep in mind when, like in our coursework, we talk about broad demographic shifts, and sometimes you can lose focus of like the individual people. The other thing is that these changes aren't happening as a part of like any natural process, that there are policies that people are putting in place that result in changes, and so we need to be very critical of those policies and with the goal of making sure that no population is being disproportionately affected or being ignored or being negatively impacted. So I think like keeping in mind the people, those stories, the people whose lives are changing as a result of these policies. These policies are man-made.
And I think it was a great point that one of the presenters made about the stigma is not the place, it's the people, which is just like, that's really hard because you can do things that make the place, whether it's improving buildings that are dilapidated or whatever, but it's ultimately only going to, in some ways, kind of fuel the process of gentrification. If you stabilize some of the buildings and make some of the dilapidated buildings better looking, then it just makes it that much more desirable for other people to want to come in. So it's this really sticky issue where you have to try to find a way to preserve institutions like the one that we're in, which is obviously has an incredibly rich history when you have 150 apartments going in next door that are going to rent for $1,000, $1,500 a month. And it's a different community, because those people maybe will be there for 2 years or something and then move on to some other apartment probably. Whereas this institution has been here and will continue to be here, and the people who associate with it carry a different set of priorities and a different history than the people who are going to be moving in across the street. And how do we reconcile the two?
A tornado came through East Nashville and tore up the hill. So we had built an addition which came up on the back side from downstairs for classrooms. We had enough classrooms to take on the school. So the city paid us, I think it was like $40,000 to use the building. That's what got this building. So, all of this came later, and the balcony and everything was added in. And the original pipe organ, and it still plays. It is absolutely beautiful. If you go on that website that Denise was talking about, Places and Spaces, I think that people can pick up a segment of that.
Part of our goal in the Special Collections and with the Public Library is to explore our past, inspire conversations, and anticipate the stories to come.
We all know that Nashville is in this sort of pivotal place in the 21st century. It's been absolutely marvelous to come and take advantage of it. But at the same time, we don't want to lose our soul. We don't want to lose our history as we change here in the 21st century. Places, spaces, and voices. A title to the project that actually they came up with as we had a good early conversation, as most good conversations happen in Nashville's neighborhoods, in the fellowship room of a church, and in this case, First Baptist East Nashville, a very historic church on the National Register.
A company, the televised movement, a media company that's about helping to share untold stories in the community. And so when I learned this project, my heart leaped, and I was like, any way we could be a part of this, whatever we can do to help. And so really glad to be here today. So this is going to be a pretty organic and relaxed panel discussion. We have some clips from many interviews and many stories that we've gotten from the community that we're going to share, but throughout those clips we're going to stop, we're going to break, and we're going to reflect as a community. And so we invite you all to do that with us, and we invite our panel to lead us in those discussions.